Hi, everybody. It's Bean, and welcome to a surprise secret sesh. A surprise, even to me. I just decided to do it this moment. A little bonus for you. And the reason is because I'm continuing to work on this book proposal that I've been reading excerpts from in progress to you on previous secret sessions. It is a book about sort of the modern state of the weed economy, both underground and above ground. They're both happening at the same time. And I do feel like after 20 years of writing on this subject, I once again have something to say and been keeping you all up to date on the progress, and also really in appreciating the kind words and the advice and just the encouragement and inspiration to keep going with this project. So where I'm at now is, first of all, let's make this a true secret sesh. This is a little package of joints that actually was gifted to me by my friend and occasional collaborator and really good person, Gabe. You might have seen his show Dope State that he made as a sort of mockumentary of the weed industry. And this is some cannabis that his mom grew at her house. And every year we get in and help with the harvest a little bit. And in return, he makes these beautiful, every year, different kind of design packaging. If you're a grower and you got that weed this time of year, believe me, it still makes a wonderful gift. I'm gonna go with one of the little J's. There's one big J in there, and his mom, who is so fun and cute, they gifted me a nice rye bread that she made, and also some diesel runts. So let's get secret seshed, and I'll read from this work in progress. No need to hit pause. You can roll one up now. You can roll one up later. Maybe you're already rolled up and ready to go. So, where I'm at now in this process is I have to write and include in this proposal a sample table of contents that tells you about what's going to be in each chapter, and sort of that block of text that's on the back of the book that hopefully convinces you to buy the book, and will, in this case, hopefully convince a publisher to buy the book. So in addition to really enjoying and appreciating your feedback and support, anything you want to drop in the comments, anything you want to send to me privately through DM, I do find that just reading these out loud really helps as well. So I'm going to try to stay with that discipline, and hopefully if this book gets picked up and I get to write the whole thing, you are the Great Moments in Weed History Patreon fam will stick with me for that whole ride, and we'll enjoy the creative process together, one secret sesh at a time. So I'm going to start with God. This time I really think I didn't hit record. Recording. I don't know. It's just one of those, like, did I lock the door things? Okie doke. I'm going to start with the copy that would be on the back of the book. So imagine yourself in your favorite bookstore, alone or with a friend or on a date or with your mom, and you pick this book up off the bookshelf. You turn, look at the back, and here's what it says. Behind the Green Door, Adventures in the Weed Trade. You may know better than to order fish on a Monday from your favorite restaurant, but are you paying top dollar at the dispensary for pre-rolled joints filled with floor sweepings? Or perhaps you just wonder how the guy at your gym who sells zip-locked eighths and ounces can offer product that's twice as kind for half the price. Author, journalist, and cannabis historian David Bienenstock has been toiling in the trenches of the weed trade for more than 20 years, in every capacity and on both sides of the law. Follow him behind the green door to resolve these mysteries and everything else you ever wanted to know about getting lit but were afraid to ask. Together, you'll meet both the rogue gallery of growers, smugglers, extractors, and dealers who've been supplying your high for decades, and the upstart purveyors of corporate cannabis aiming to displace them. You'll join an anarchistic, off-the-grid trim crew harvesting Humboldt County's finest flowers under cover of darkness, work a soul-crushing double shift behind the counter at a cannabis chain store, and sit across the conference table from a bunch of B-school geniuses who figured out how to lose billions selling drugs. At once, a gonzo journey from the farm to your bong, a cautionary tale of cannabis and capitalism commingling, and an unapologetic celebration of authentic outlaw culture, this book is your passport to a world that's always existed, just beneath the surface. Turn the page, and you'll turn a key that unlocks the underground and accesses the C-suite, ushering you directly into the weed trade's ultimate smoky back rooms. Okay. And then these are the chapters. And this is like making a mixtape, you know. I'm still playing with the order of them. So really any input is much appreciated. So first there's an intro chapter, which is actually the one that I read in a previous secret sesh. Chapter 1. Supply chains versus supply lines. Those of you still stuck living under cannabis prohibition can be forgiven for not knowing precisely where your weed, vapes, dabs, and edibles come from, or whose hands they pass through along the way. Everyone involved in that endeavor is actively breaking the law, so it's really best not to ask. But whether that little bud in your hand started life in a massive Mexican field, a retractable Northern California greenhouse, or a climate-controlled basement in Detroit, it inevitably passed through 4 stages while en route to your lungs: planting, harvest, wholesale, retail. The very same stages, by the way, that legal weed must pass through. Only, in that case, nobody's breaking the law. Except federal law, technically. And, you know, whatever falls off the truck, that's considered diversion. Plus, maybe a little light tax evasion, like any business, some OSHA violations, wage theft, you know, capitalism. To explore these parallel economies, we'll follow a variety of underground supply lines and a few legally compliant supply chains. Oh, the places we'll go, and oh, the weed we'll smoke. But the real Acapulco gold is the friendships we'll make along the way. Okay, that was chapter 1. Chapter 2, High Times. The world's most iconic cannabis magazine was founded in 1974 by a renegade weed smuggler and political provocateur named Tom Forcade. He flew plane loads of South American sativa into South Florida, helped kickstart America's transgressive underground press movement, threw a pie in the face of a committee chairman while testifying before Congress, and was once indicted for a supposed plot to firebomb the Republican National Convention. Today, his most enduring creation, High Times, is run out of a choked on that one. Today, his most enduring creation, High Times, is run out of a hedge fund office, which sums things up as well as anything. For about 10 years, somewhere in between the early glory days and the ugly present day, I proudly served as a High Times editor, an adventure that afforded me unparalleled access to the hidden world of weed during its greatest time of transformation. Not to mention a front row seat to witness the foul dust floating in the wake of Tom Forcade's dream. It's a little Great Gatsby reference. All right. Chapter 3. Hooray for Hollyweed. Originally released in 1936 as a church-backed cautionary tale, Reefer Madness was quickly resold, recut, and re-released on the B-movie exploitation circuit of the 1940s, before again resurfacing in the 1970s as an ironically presented midnight movie for stoners. Which is just to say that from Up in Smoke to Murder Mountain, the entertainment industry has always had a complicated relationship with cannabis culture, something I can attest to firsthand. In 2014, I created and produced the first season of Bong Appetit, a Vice series about weed and food. It was hosted by Abdullah Saeed, who would later be my co host on our podcast, Great Moments in Weed History. I've spent the last 10 years pitching and occasionally even selling shows about weed. Along the way, I met and got lit with pretty much every kind of Hollywood weedhead you can imagine. Moguls, comics, actors, screenwriters, showrunners, producers, talent agents, key grips, wheelers, and dealers. Even Zach Jesus Hands Fernandez, who on New Year's Day 2017 scaled the side of the Hollywood sign and affixed giant tarps to make it read Hollyweed. Now he's got a weed brand called Hollyweed. Natch. Okay, chapter maybe 3? Chapter 3, Humble. According to no less an authority than famed astronomer Carl Sagan, cannabis very well may have been the first plant humans ever thought to cultivate, instead of merely forage, giving rise to the age of agriculture and all it portends. Ancient trade routes for hashish date back at least to the old Silk Road through the Middle East, making growing cannabis for hash a far, far older profession than growing grapes to make wine or hops to brew beer. America's most storied cannabis cultivation region is Humboldt County, California, where a bunch of back to the land hippies and freaks moved in the 1960s to set up homesteads. Through all the highs, a $100 bill used to be called a Humboldt 20, and lows, relentless federal helicopter raids, to follow, the county became synonymous with outlaw culture and killer weed, at least to those in the know. I first reached Humboldt in 2007 as a High Times reporter on assignment and have fallen in love with the place and its people over many return visits. Humboldt is where I learned to trim weed for a living. First gave the blessing of my leavings to a compost toilet. Very well might have met Bigfoot and most definitely fell in with the weirdest regional stand-up comedy scene going. It's truly weed country with an incredible story to tell and a highly uncertain future. Chapter 5, Regulatory Capture. And here's where I borrow a line from my illustrious co-host that you have no doubt heard in previous episodes of the podcast. You absolutely cannot trust the same authorities and institutions that unjustly prosecuted the war on marijuana for 100 years to turn around and justly regulate the plant's cultivation, distribution, and sale. How can you put the same people who were wrong about everything in charge? And yet, in state after state, crooked politicians, big money donors, and big tobacco lobbyists conspire together to make sure that in the new green economy, capital wins out over quality every time. Even overt efforts to tip the scales in the other direction through state-run programs focused on restorative justice have too often become tools of further exploitation and injustice. Fortunately, something in this plant's nature resists corporatization, just as it resisted criminalization. Weed shall overcome. Okay, chapter 5, maybe? Counterculture. The most common entry-level job in the legal cannabis industry is bud tending, which is basically retail customer service. Bud tenders work behind the counter at a dispensary and help people select and purchase products. Just like bartenders, they have a prime perch from which to observe everything that goes on in both the front and back of house. So to see how the THC-infused sausage gets made and sold these days, I worked 2 different bud tender jobs. First at a dispensary focused on sourcing directly from small family farms that grow organically and work to regenerate the land, and then at the shittiest corporate cannabis chain store in California. Chapter, let's say, 7. Burning bridges. in which I call bullshit on many of the most heavily capitalized brands and corporations operating in the legal cannabis industry today, ensuring that if this book does not become a bestseller, I may never get high in this town again. For starters, every single celebrity driven cannabis brand is crap. Yes, especially that one. And chapter, let's say, 8. What's in a name? Like avocados, apples, potatoes, and most other commercial crops, cannabis comes in a wide range of varietals. Think Haas, Macintosh, Russet, only, weed. As a judge at dozens of international cannabis competitions, I've delved about as deep into the murky world of weed strains as you can go. But to be honest, I can no longer keep up. I smoke as much as ever. More, really, because I'm working from home, but it's a bit like aging out of knowing the latest music. Legalization has brought with it a level of marketing sufficient to launch a new set of hype strains every few months, sparking an endless competition to smoke the latest drops for social media clout. Count me out. What's my favorite strain? Whatever you'd like to share. Go back a generation, meanwhile, and because it all happened underground, it's often impossible to properly credit the brilliant breeders behind all time cornerstone Hall of Fame strains like Northern Lights. That's not only a loss to history, it's a wide open lane for Big Ag to come in and start claiming cannabis patents. A process that's well underway with potentially terrible consequences looming in the future. Fortunately, the power is all in our hands. We live in a consumerist society, which is generally a bummer, but also means the weed market will be defined by the people who consume this plant the most. And hey, guess what? That's us. Grow your own when you can and source the rest from people who are doing it right. Smoke the cannabis you want to see in the world. All right, and with that, I'll light up a little more of this excellent backyard home grow from the homie's mom, and just say, thanks for listening and sharing this creative process with me. And I would truly, truly, truly love to hear any thoughts on any aspect of this. I am going to be sending this along to my book agent early next week. And there's still time to make some changes. So please let me know what you think. Thanks for sharing this secret sesh with me. Thanks for continuing to support the show. And stay tuned for our annual holiday special about Santa being a psychedelic mushroom shaman. All right. Thanks, everybody.